Marvel Rivals is quickly becoming a force within the hero shooter genre and is now a must-play game at the tail end of 2024. As a result, both experienced players and those new to hero shooters are diving in, and as you'd expect, are making a lot of mistakes. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're sharing everything we wish we knew sooner to help you get an edge in Marvel Rivals. If you didn't know, we've been doing this series since 2019, and as far as I know, we're the only channel that consistently releases tips and tricks videos like this for most major game releases. That being said, this series is designed to help players of all skills better understand the game, and as always, we'll start with some more foundational tips and quickly get more detailed. Whether you're new to hero shooters or an experienced veteran, one of the most important things you can do before diving into a match is tweak your settings. And no, we aren't just talking about graphics or performance adjustments. In hero shooters, you often have intricate elements that can be fully customized across the board, but you also have the ability to set up custom controls for every single hero. With that in mind, let's start wide and focus in tighter as we go. In the settings menu under the Combat tab are a number of options that allow you to massively tweak your crosshair parameters, tailoring the visual to whatever suits you best. Size, shape, color, thickness, design, the options are staggering. If you're someone that struggles with accuracy or feels the visual clutter of a dozen abilities going off makes it hard to see, then this might be a good first step, as small tweaks can produce massive results. From here, let's move in a different direction, but this is where setting options on each individual character become necessary. First, let's talk about healing and damage indicators. In Marvel Rivals, a lot of supports have the ability to both heal and deal damage with their basic attacks, and when teams begin to clash, it's often difficult to recognize if the allies you are intending to heal are actually getting healed, or if your attacks are simply just contributing to the damage. Under each hero's respective menu, you can find a setting called Healing Reticle Feedback. Turning this on will display a green healing effect on your crosshair whenever you're healing and a red effect on your crosshair whenever you're dealing damage. When playing a melee hero, you'll want to know when your melee attacks and abilities are actually within range, or you might risk wasting them. This is where Display Attack Range comes into play, a really useful setting for all those melee-focused brawlers out there. Turning this option on will display a targeting icon for melee heroes as soon as your character comes within range of an attack of an enemy target. This is extremely useful, especially when starting out, to really understand the striking distance of each hero and their abilities. Then there's Wall Crawling, an ability a shocking amount of characters have. You may like how this setting is by default, so we'd encourage you to try it out first, but if you feel something is a bit off, we may have a solution for you. You'll find an option for each character with this ability that says Direction of Wall Crawling, and it features a drop-down menu with two options. By default, it's set to Advance Vertically Upwards, which simply has your character moving upwards by default, with all movement focused on your joysticks or WASD, which can feel a bit all over the place, especially for a character like Jeff. A better option, in our opinion, is Advance Towards Crosshair. With this setting on, you'll now just need to press forward and your character will move wherever your crosshair is targeting. Overall, we find this experience to be much better for most players. Finally, let's talk about a setting that impacts two of the more technical characters in the game, Spider-Man and Venom. We are, of course, talking about their web-swinging mechanic, and if frustrated by how it performs, you're not alone. By default, the swing massively reduces your overall control with the character in an effort to make them more accessible to most players. However, if you want more control, change either the easy swing setting for Venom or the automatic swing setting for Spider-Man. This is enabled by default and will target a random surface and make your swinging near uncontrollable. Disabling this will make your web swing only attach where you're targeting. This helps you make more calculated swing movements with less of a chance for error. Also, if you have a habit of accidentally pressing your swing button and there isn't a surface within range of your reticle, now you won't waste the ability's charge. If you weren't aware, Marvel Rivals has a momentum-based movement system. This means when your abilities or environmental interactables catapult you in a direction, you can often take advantage of the movement to traverse the map often much faster. Just look at Spider-Man. Normally, if you web swing, especially after tweaking his settings, you can jump out of his animation shortly after casting it, and the momentum will carry you forward. Also, if you can master short-distance web anchoring, this will translate to a fast ground-level bunny hop that can help you blaze through corridors or open areas without exposing yourself to the enemy. Another great example is the Punisher. His ziplines are reusable, which means when you place one down after a respawn, you don't need to use the ability again the next time you die. Your zipline will still be there and you just need to interact with it again to use it. This allows you to set up a zipline system that makes the Punisher surprisingly efficient at getting back to the team after dying compared to most other heroes. Now, instead of just letting the zipline animation finish, consider jumping right at the end. This will catapult you forward, allowing for the same bunny hop style technique as Spider-Man. One final one is for Moon Knight. You can abuse Moon Knight's grapple and double jump to be absolutely lethal in combat. When grappling an area, wait for the grapple to almost finish. At the tail end, throw a ranged attack and immediately double jump. You'll see yourself skyrocket into the air, forcing enemies to adjust their sightlines to your new, elevated position. What we're getting at here is simple. If an ability or movement option causes some sort of momentum transfer, you can likely abuse it to your own benefit. In our opinion, one of the most underutilized things in Marvel Rivals are team-ups. There are currently 15 team-ups in the game, and these are activated by simply having the right combination of heroes on your team. With every team-up, there is one leader character who provides the condition. This character will actually receive a significant passive stat bonus that changes each season. Then, other characters, usually one or more, can make use of that anchor effect to enable other special abilities or have significant passive effects become available to them. For instance, Cloak and Dagger infuse Moon Knight with the power of light and dark, allowing him to gain a separate ability on a mere 30-second cooldown where he can spawn an AoE that completely conceals himself from enemies while within it. That means you can sit inside this thing and freely attack enemies without them having any idea where to shoot to hit you. Cloak and Dagger, on the other hand, receive a significant passive boost to their healing capabilities, which were already extremely potent. Another incredible team-up is Rocket and his ability to grant infinite ammo and a massive 67% fire rate increase to both the Punisher and Winter Soldier. This turns already monstrous DPS characters into ones capable of not only some of the highest DPS bursts in the game, but the ability to straight up end a team fight. And yes, we do see these team-ups triggered every so often, but it's rarely the result of players intentionally picking complementary characters. If you're solo queuing into a game, genuinely consider learning heroes that enable these team-ups and try not to just play one character. You'll often have a much higher chance of winning your matches just by having valuable team-up perks active over your opponents. One of the most annoying things to see as a support player are DPS players and even tanks not making use of cover. Often they'll sit in the open far away from the team, soaking damage from 4 different sources, and then complain about not getting healed. The twist? They most likely are, and it's just more than most supports can heal. And I know, this may be a surprise for some of you, but the attention of supports needs to be on the entire team, not just you. The simple fix: make use of cover. Peek for your damage, and when you get that recognizable audio cue that you've taken critical damage, retreat back behind cover. You can even ping for heals, which is insanely valuable to supports if your team is spread all over the map. To add on to this, specifically for characters with ranged attacks, you are less exposed peeking from the right behind cover than you are from the left. This is because characters are positioned to the left of the reticle in-game, and as such, the placement of your physical model actually matters. If you are a ranged character and find you're getting constantly outgunned when peeking from cover, this may be the reason. Those that utilize this trick will only have their arms or weapons exposed to enemies, allowing you to deal damage with a significantly smaller hitbox. Peeking to the left, however, will expose your entire body before you're even able to use a ranged attack. This should always be on the top of your mind when playing as a ranged DPS character. I bet a lot of you didn't know that damage falloff is a thing in Marvel Rivals. I'd be surprised if you did. In fact, every single ranged character in the game has an effective range with their attacks, to the point that not understanding their optimal damage range can cost you as much as 60 to 70% of your overall damage. This information is surprisingly nowhere in-game, so how do we, of all people, a couple of schmoes at Legacy Gaming, know? Well, it's all documented on the game's official website. Simply go to the hero roster, check their abilities, and you'll see under their attacks where falloff begins and how much damage you lose. Now, you're probably saying, well, that's all well and good, Kodiak, but how am I supposed to visualize that distance? Calm down, I'll tell you. The answer is the practice range, a special game mode you can jump into from the main menu. Inside this practice range, there's a dedicated range testing area, complete with meter markers on the ground in front of targets. Not only is this a fantastic place to just get acclimated with any character in the game, but it's the perfect place to get used to each character's unique damage falloff settings. Being able to actually practice in a relaxed environment instead of guessing in a hectic match means there is no excuse for not making use of this tip. Let's talk Marvel Rivals strategy for just a moment, and I think this will actually help a significant amount of players out there based on our experience with pickup groups. Whether you're attacking and need to break down a team's defenses, or you're defending and need to stay alive, supports are the key to it all. Every team needs at least one or two strategists that really shouldn't even be up for discussion. Depending on their respective healing potencies, losing a support during a fight can quite literally turn the tide of an engagement. You and your team should be trying to eliminate supports on the enemy team as soon as the window of opportunity presents itself, as taking one out instantly gives your team an edge and the ability to chip away at the rest of the enemy heroes. On the flip side, you should be looking to keep your own supports protected from elimination. The enemy team will try to backline your supports, and if your DPS or tanks aren't keeping their heads on a swivel, coming to the aid of those players, you shouldn't complain about the lack of heals when you aren't doing anything to give them the space to keep you alive. In the same vein, characters like Penny Parker and Rocket Raccoon deploy devices that augment the teams they're on, and these are targetable. In the case of Penny Parker, destroying her bionic spider nest essentially shuts down her entire kit and thus her effectiveness. If you're playing her, put these in areas away from prying eyes, not out in the open, and for everyone else, do your best to protect these while destroying the ones the enemies themselves have put down. With all these fights breaking out, I'm sure many of you have gotten into those tight 1v1 fights where both ranged players are having a comically hard time landing those last few attacks needed to kill one another. What if I told you that shouldn't ever be an issue? Fun fact, every hero in Marvel Rivals has a melee attack, regardless of if you are ranged or not, and oftentimes these can have special effects after landing successive blows on the target. For instance, Moon Knight's batons after 3 hits will knock enemies up into the air, and there are plenty of times when a slippery support dances around where a couple good melee hits would finish them off instead of struggling to land a few ranged attacks. Consider rebinding this attack to something more accessible or muscle memory related so you can pivot to melee when you need it the most. Oftentimes, reloading will take you more time than simply smacking an enemy to finish them off, so don't be caught in those situations anymore. One big mistake we see players make all the time is strafing from side to side. This actually stops your character in the process, losing significant momentum and making you much easier to hit. Instead, try to circle strafe. This will keep your momentum and allow you to dodge incoming projectiles more easily while allowing your character to reposition out of that position much quicker. While we're talking about speeding up our actions, did you also know that your melee can be used to animation cancel many different abilities, such as your ranged attacks? When in close quarter engagements with heroes, consider weaving in the occasional melee attack right back into your ranged attack, and you'll notice a solid 5 to 10% increase in your overall DPS against a target. In Marvel Rivals, you absolutely need to be making use of the destructible environments, and not just because they look cool. Oftentimes, entirely alternate paths to objectives or strong sightlines for ranged damage dealers open up when you manipulate the environment. Normally, this would take a good amount of time to identify where all those destructible elements are within a map and really memorize their placement. However, what if we told you there was a button to allow you to simply see these things? Pressing B on the keyboard or right on the D-pad on controller will activate Chronovision. This will allow you to actually see all the things in the environment that can be interacted with and altered. As you're going around, get used to using this and try breaking things. See where the paths lead, see what sightlines open up, and truly figure out what works best for the character that you're playing. Opening up a wall for yourself might be good on one character, but leaving it closed and paying attention to it might be advantageous for catching the same type of player now trying to flank you. It's something that's going to get used more and more as player competency with these systems increases, so be on the cutting edge of strategies instead of others using them against you. Let's talk heroes and help you elevate your gameplay with some of the more nuanced characters in the game. Did you know that Moon Knight's Ankh isn't just for hitting enemies and knocking them back? When placed on a surface, it generates an AoE. When you hit this AoE with your basic ranged attacks, they'll send your attacks into all enemies within that AoE at a much faster damage rate, to the point you can quite literally delete multiple heroes in seconds if they group on top of your Ankh while you're attacking. Enemies can and should attack these as soon as they see them to severely cripple Moon Knight's ability to control an area, because these attacks can even bounce to other Ankhs, repeating the same damage on everything in the AoE if the circle AoEs from the Ankhs overlap the central points of each other. This can allow you to create an absolute kill box for enemies in certain situations. Frustrated by Scarlet Witch's AoE nuke, or just attacks in general that AoE your entire team off guard, consider using Cloak and Dagger. While in Cloak's shadow form, your dark teleportation ability will phase you and your allies for 2 seconds. So yes, timing is extremely important with this ability. This phase state makes you and your allies both invisible and temporarily untargetable. You can deploy this right before Scarlet Witch's nuke goes off, and it will completely negate the ability, shutting down a monstrous team play with a basic ability. Let's talk Star-Lord. One of the biggest mistakes we see players make when it comes to this Guardian is how to properly use his ultimate. We've talked about damage Falloff, and Galactic Legend is one of the only abilities in the game that makes Star-Lord's blasters go from 10 meters before Falloff to a whopping 25 meters before damage Falloff. This gives Star-Lord incredible temporary range and damage potential, so as such, you need to maximize this ability. There is a reason he gains free flight during the ability. Take to the air and get to the best vantage point you can with your basic rocket propulsion boots. Then slam on this ability and rain death from above. Trust us, you'll delete more heroes than you ever thought possible in mere seconds. Just be aware of enemy snipers and try to hang around cover and corners while in the air. We've got a small but massively impactful tip for Wolverine. For those that actively play him, have you ever found yourself overshooting an enemy with Feral Leap, completely wasting the ability? As it turns out, you can animation cancel this by using Vicious Rampage shortly after leaping. Not only does this let you leap towards enemies without gaining as much height, but you can also do a full 180-degree turn mid-leap this way, leading to some crazy movement and combat tech to catch your opponents completely off guard. For every lights-out Venom player I witness, 10 more have genuinely no idea how this character effectively works. Your kit is entirely designed for diving enemy teams, but you have to be smart about it. Don't pop your shield ability until you're low health. The lower you are, the more shield you get. This is literally the biggest mistake I see bad Venom players make all the time. When it comes to keeping up the pressure, Cellular Corrosion allows you to finish off enemies by slowing them down 15%. The only way to break the slow is for enemies to move 11 meters away, so stay with them. This slow helps paint a target on that enemy hero, giving your team a clear target who to kill. Finally, don't be afraid to use Venom Swing in the middle of combat. Use it to break line of sight and then crash back down with Frenzied Arrival for some explosive re-entry damage. It's that chaotic element that can really stress out players on the enemy team, and you should absolutely lean into it. A wildly misplayed character, Penny Parker, is actually insane. She is one of the best point defenders in the game. Don't be shy about using her mines to lay traps wherever enemies might venture, even if you don't have webs there to conceal them. Our biggest tip, however, is to maximize the use of Bionic Spider Nest, which increases speed, heals you over time, and converts excess healing into bonus health. Always place this out of line of sight of enemies around a corner or behind an environmental piece. As players get better, they're going to kill these just as quickly as the supports on your team if they're out in the open. If you lose this nest, you have to play careful, because without it, her entire kit becomes that less effective. So there you have it, everything we wish we knew sooner about Marvel Rivals. As always, if you have a favorite tip or trick you'd like to share with the community, leave a comment down below. And of course, if you appreciate the time and effort we put into these videos, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching and play on.